Chapter 9 of The History of My Insanity by Trisha Paytas. If you are new to this channel, you have come in at Chapter 9, and I'm just, right now what I'm doing in this series, okay, I am going to be reading several books by Trisha Paytas, and I started with, I believe this was her first one, The History of My Insanity, and then we're going into the Stripper Diaries, only because I have that one, and then after that one, I really want to jump into 101 Poems. But in this book, it's been a crazy ride, and if you follow Trisha Paytas now, you know that she's about to get married, and looks like things have finally gotten a little better for her with her positiveness and her, The Secret, reinforcing all of those affirmations and encompassing everything that she's into right now. So let's get into chapter 9. Alrighty, it is called Hollywood. Here I come again. Valentine's Day came around, and my dad, his wife, and I were going out for dinner since I didn't really have any friends, nor did I have a boyfriend. We had done this the previous year, and it was nice not to be alone for the holidays. However, jealousy reared its ugly head with my stepmom, and she told my dad I was uninvited. They went out alone, and I remember bawling on the phone to my mom and sister that I felt so alone and abandoned again, and that I needed to get out. My sister was already out of state at the time on account of my mom getting married to a man in Michigan, so they had every right to move out of California if they wanted to. My mom's marriage wasn't making her happy, so she decided to get a divorce and move out to Los Angeles. One thing I will say about my mom and her marriages, I know she is mortified by how many times she's tied the knot and divorced, but I admire her for getting out of something that was making her miserable. I won't speak up for my dad, but what I observe in his marriage is a lot of jealousy, unhappiness, and maliciousness. My dad's rules for divorce never included unhappiness, and I always asked him about this. His answers are fuzzy, but if something is tearing you down emotionally, isn't that a form of abuse? The timing was perfect. I found all three of us an apartment in the valley. It was a beautiful 2-bedroom, but I was willing to share a room with my mom if it meant getting out of the prison with my dad's house. With my new winnings and my mom's tax return, we were able to split the deposit, get our credits approved, and move in. I committed to go to church, and this was the first time in a long time that I felt alive and optimistic. I was close to my auditions, and once again with the family I had known growing up. We all got along so much better as adults. I was living off little acting jobs I got here and there. I worked consistently doing background work, audience jobs, various talk shows, and reality shows. I searched all day on Craigslist and casting websites for any gig that paid. I even made up stories to get on certain shows. Lying is pretty much the same thing as acting, and I consider myself an actress. Okay. It's hard for me not to say anything. Being a trained actress myself, shall we go on? I had booked one of my biggest roles to date, a lead in the Eminem video, We Made You, as the fat Jessica Simpson. Hollywood sure is relentless to celebrities who gain a few pounds, but nevertheless, it was a tremendous exposure and big paycheck for me at the time. I had my first viral video after the video was released. My world's fastest talker video that had hit 1 million views in the first 4 months. It was up, which was my record. I saw a little bit of money from YouTube for the first time. I had made a couple $100 from that YouTube, and that encouraged me to keep making more. It was quite remarkable that a video of me just speed reading a passage from a book would acquire such an audience. I still don't fully understand the appeal of those videos. As I'm writing this, it now has over 6 million views. Maybe because it's weird, maybe because people think it's fake, or that it sounds like I'm speaking in tongues, or maybe it's because my giant padded bras made my boobs look like F cups. Either way, I felt like I was succeeding at something I've always wanted to make a living doing, which was entertaining people. After that M&M video, people started contacting me. No longer was I begging people to look at me or call me in for something. I mean, I still was, but I was getting more opportunities just for me and not competing with other girls. Plus size clothing and lingerie companies contacted me for modeling opportunities. I was short, but I was very curvy. And as I've been told my entire life, I carry my weight well and my body proportions are pleasing to the eye. This is true, okay? She is overweight, very overweight. She looks good though. She looks good in her clothes. She looks really good. Now she just took a picture. I'm hesitating of whether to put it up here or not, but she just took a picture of her naked from the back, and she's okay with that picture being out. Obviously, she's the one who posted it, and okay, that's it. I should just show you the picture. I'm going to put the picture right here. I got an email from companies. I'm not going to say anything about that picture. I got an email from companies that wanted me to model their clothes in catalogs, on billboards, online, etc. I even did a couple of romance novel covers. I loved modeling. It was easy work, and the fact that I was considered a plus model meant I could still eat and not have to starve myself. It helped me pay the bills, which I actually did this time around, thanks to my mom keeping me on track. I understood the value of $1, and I understood bills came first, and that meant not having money left over to buy a new bag. I wasn't getting a new bag. Things were going pretty well by the time I turned 21. I felt like I had control over my life. In June of 2009, I experienced my first painful death. Both of my grandfathers had died when I was in junior high, but I wasn't super close to either. So I didn't have a mourning period with their passing. However, one day as I was looking on MySpace to see if Brian had checked in, I noticed a blog posting that said he had passed away. I was shocked and confused, and I found out that he had committed suicide. Something he always said he was going to do before he turned 50. In email exchanges for the 3 years we knew each other, I knew he wanted a wife and children, but I also knew he wanted it to happen sooner than later. He had issues, but he never was open with his as I was with mine. I was devastated because of how we left things. The month before he died, I had asked him if he wanted to get back together. But I think after so many times of blowing him off and putting him on the back burner, he was just sick of me. I gotta stop. Why would she say that he wanted them? No, she called the month before he died, I had called him and asked if he wanted to get back together, when she previously has said she's never slept with him. It was platonic. They never really dated. Well, they went out, but they never really had a relationship. So now she's asking him to get back together, but he had passed. So that's contradictory. He told me to never contact him again, and that he was FUCT, remember that? And I was FUCT. I asked him if he wanted to go see a concert with me in August of 2009, and he replied by saying he wasn't going to be around then. He had said this a lot. If I'm around, if I'm still alive, etc. It's not that I thought he was joking. I just didn't know what to do. He told me things when I was depressed, like, don't call suicide helplines because they will take you to a mental hospital. I guess it shouldn't have been a warning sign that he knew this. I just didn't know how to deal with someone who didn't want to live. He didn't speak to his family, and he didn't have close friends. So there was no one for him to talk to or reach out to about how he felt. The truth of the matter is that if someone really wants to take his own life, there's not much you can do. I tried to be there and be his friend and listen, but you can't control other people's actions. His death hit me hard because it was someone who always was willing to help me out in every way, including financial. He was like the father I've always wanted, supporting my dreams and goals, even though they weren't his, and helping me out financially to achieve this. Well, Trisha, your dad helped you out a lot financially, like a lot. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands. In May, when he said to not contact him again, I didn't take him seriously. He said that a lot when he was upset or hurt by me, but I always was able to pull him back in because of our connection. Not anymore. He was gone, but I didn't want to believe it. This was the beginning of my bad summers. The whole summer, I sat in my apartment, ate myself into a coma every night, and had no motivation to do anything. Life didn't seem real. Life seemed unfair, and circumstances seemed to be getting worse. Nobody in our household really had a job, so we were all on top of each other. My mom, of course, started going back to her old ways and talking to stepdad number 3 again. My sister really lost her purpose out here. She didn't know what she wanted, and I think she missed her friends. I resented her for little things like having her own room when I had to share with my mom. It irritated me, and so I started getting ready to run again as soon as I could. I lacked motivation to do YouTube videos, and nobody remembered me from years ago to help me get any sort of auditions. I found a strip club a few blocks away from my house. I went in, and it felt like the only home I'd ever had. The strip club was in the valley. No, the strip club was a valley strip club. If you go to the strip club in the valley, you're going into a warehouse, basically. My club was run by Persian men, and our managers were Mexican ladies. This was the club I thrived at the most because it was mainly full of minorities. Okay, let me start. This is the club I thrived at the most because it was mainly full of minorities, both dancers and customers. I was the only white girl working at the club, which meant I was a rare gem. Okay? The only time I had sex in the club with someone I didn't recognize, just an average citizen, was when I first started working in this club. I wasn't getting any dances. No girls were. And the only way he'd do VIP with me was if I agreed to have sex with him. It was awful, and I cried and ran out halfway through. He was semi-attractive, which was the only reason I agreed. But I was having sex with someone I didn't want to for half of a VIP dance, which was a $60 payout. I was used to getting thousands of dollars from people in the entertainment industry who I would have had sex with regardless of the money just a couple of years prior. I knew I was sinking back lower, but I couldn't really stop. I let people continue to do everything else. I felt worthless. I felt like this was my life, and I had to accept it. I often been questioned by my family and a few boyfriends if I'm bipolar. We've been through this. The truth is that I am not. I have sought out therapists and psychiatrists, and both just think I have experienced some traumatic events, but I'm not bipolar. If I ever felt bipolar, however, it was at this time. I would go to the club and just not care about STDs or really how I looked, and I would feel absolutely miserable, as if life wasn't worth living. The next day I'd go out and eat and shop, which are my two biggest endorphin rushes. So it really was two lives. At the same time, I was doing YouTube more regularly, just as a hobby, and I was talking about how happy I was when I knew in just a few short hours I'd be back at the strip clubs, which was basically a street corner. In September 2009, one of my superhero friends from the show called and said she was going to be a local Comic Con down in Long Beach, and she wanted to know if I'd share her booth with her. I was excited because it was something to get me out of the house, and it wasn't a strip club. I didn't go to my traditional limelight costume that sci-fi had given me, but I went in the traditional limelight colors. Limelight 2.0, as I like to call her. The first day of the 3-day convention was on Friday. If anybody knows that's listening to this what this limelight colors, what are traditional limelight colors and limelight 2.0? I want to know. So if you know what the answer is, let me know down below. I'd appreciate it. I went in one of my silver stripper skirts. Wait. The first day of the 3-day convention was a Friday. I went in one of my silver stripper skirts and a silver sequined bra with lime green fishnet on top. I felt good. I felt sexy. I felt like a stripper walking onto the Comic Con floor. I was on a break and walking around the con, just looking at everything and taking pictures for my blog, when one of the actors on Celebrity Row stopped me. Honey, come over here, he said. I knew his name but wasn't sure who he was. He was standing up with other castmates from a TV show he had just done, and I thought he was so handsome. I looked down at his pictures, and he was selling, and he looked so different as a kid compared to the man who was standing in front of me. As a kid, he had made movies in which he always played a geek, sort of awkward, scrawny type with braces. I wasn't familiar with any of his films, but the TV shows he had completed a couple of years prior, so I wasn't really starstruck, but I was in awe of his looks and his charm. We chatted for a few minutes, but then I had to leave to get back to my own booth. Within an hour, his assistant or friend came over and gave me a card with the actor's name and number. For the sake of this book and his privacy, we'll call him Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect was about 6 foot 1 inch with broad shoulders, blonde hair, blonde eyelashes, and the prettiest blue eyes you'll ever see. He had huge hands, which I noticed right away, and a manly and fresh scent to him that I dreamed about. He was the first guy who I was giddy to go out with. I envisioned our marriage and babies the first night after meeting him. His friend asked me for my number to give to him, so I did. Let's get real. I was never going to call him first. I would never have the confidence. I didn't see him for the rest of that day, but I had butterflies all that night and I couldn't sleep. I was up at 3 a.m. the next day to go back to the convention. I wore a silver sequin dress this time with lime green gloves. I got there right before the convention opened to set up my booth, and he was about an hour late after the show started. I saw him come in, and he came immediately over to the booth where my superhero girlfriend and I were signing, and he gave me a kiss on the cheek and a hug and called me beautiful. He said we should hang out soon and that he'd call me. I was floating. I just was gushing. The other superhero girl with me was about 15 years older than I was. So she was excited because she knew who he was, which in turn made me feel even more special that he knew who I was and wanted to go out with me. I left the con early that day because it was slow, and I didn't say goodbye to him because I was too shy to talk to him. As I was driving home, I received a phone call. It was him. I was so nervous that I couldn't even speak. Mr. Perfect wanted to go out that night in Long Beach, but I was already in traffic, headed back to LA. He then suggested we blow off day 3 of the con and that I go to his beach house. I said yes, no questions asked. Mr. Perfect's house was beautiful, right on the ocean in a little beach town. I was terrified. I had on a Forever 21 sundress and wedges. He greeted me with a really long kiss on the lips, and I was taken aback. No guy had ever been this forward when we hadn't even been out on a date yet, and we hadn't even really had the getting to know you chat. The kiss led to making out, which led to his bedroom. From past experiences, I know how this is going to end, but I was so attracted to him that I didn't care. I didn't care that he might give me money for this, or he just might never call me again. I wanted him so badly, and I was down. He didn't wear a condom, but I didn't care. I wanted to have his babies the first day I met him. We had the best sex I've ever had, even to this day. It was beautiful, and he held me afterwards. I had never been cuddled before this point. Isn't that crazy? I always either left immediately afterward or I would just lie there in a cold slumber. We then got up and showered together, and he said he would take me out to breakfast. What? He wanted to spend time with me even after we had sex? That was unheard of to me. I was so giddy. We sat next to each other on the same side of the booth, and he ordered for us. I couldn't even eat. I was so nervous. He was Prince Charming. He was my Mr. Perfect. And the fact that he drove a black Porsche, that didn't hurt either. He paid for us, and we went back to his house, had more sex, and talked and walked on the beach and watched movies. We spent the whole day together. I had to leave that night to go and work because Sundays were the only days I was making money, and I knew I couldn't fall behind on my bills, especially now that my mom and sister were living out here and we were all surviving paycheck to paycheck, so to speak. I remember telling him what I did and that I had to leave, and he was really sad. He asked me if I'd come back after work, and I said, I don't know, it's so late. I remember him getting really upset because apparently earlier in the day, he'd asked me to stay another night with him and forever. And I guess I said yes, but that was during lovemaking. I'd say anything to him. I wasn't thinking straight. I said I'd call him after I was done and see how tired I was. We were hot and heavy really fast. He told me he loved me that day, and I told him I love you. Is this normal? Absolutely not. However, I knew we had this connection, and it was a connection in the worst kind of way. Ta-da! That is chapter 9. Wow. So I wonder what's going to happen to this guy, Mr. Perfect. So anyways, chapter 10 begins with the only man I ever loved. And I think that's Mr. Perfect. So how many chapters do we have? Okay, chapter 10 is just like 2 pages, you guys. So that's going to be a bit, short chapter. Then we have 11, the year of YouTube. Let's see how many chapters we got. Now, the next chapter is a bit longer. The next chapter, oh wait, is a bit longer. But then chapter 12 is only 2 pages, and it's called To Be Continued. We're almost done. We're almost done with this book. So I will see you again really soon for chapter 10. The only man I have ever loved is chapter 10. I hope you enjoyed this read. Leave your comments down below, as I always like having a discussion with you, especially about Trisha Paytas. And I will see you in my next reading. Unless, of course, you are following the makeup giveaway challenge, which I just filmed. Wait, I just filmed video number 1 today, so you can still enter and win all kinds of eyeshadow palettes and other goodies. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Okay, bye.